Okay. We had a mini panel yesterday, but it was so social, and we think we didn't do justice to the things we do. So we should talk about a bit more technical stuff today, and we have the panel of the German researchers that have introduced themselves, but we will give them time to reintroduce themselves, talk a bit about your research, what are you doing, and how you feel your research is important. Shall we start from Mamadou from there? That's the first question.
All right. Thank you very much, Boubacar. Thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. It's a great opportunity. So as I introduced myself yesterday, I'm Mohamed C. GRC at M Senegal. I started in August. For research interest, I have two big problems that interest me the most in mathematical research. And everything I do is like toward to treat those two problems. I mean, at the deepest level, actually, it is just one problem, but they are expressed in two ways. The first one is the fluid dynamics, I mean, the mathematical understanding of fluid dynamics, which is related to the Navier-Stokes equation, which is the three-dimensional Navier-Stokes, which is very open, and one of the millennium problem. So very hard problem. I want to just understand this in some sense. The second problem is the Schrödinger type equations. There are a set of equations that are dispersive. Dispersive means just like you have some waves when they evolve in time, they tend to spread in different directions depending on the frequencies, because the wave is a superposition of frequencies. You know, you start something like that, and then you let it move, and then it decouples with respect to the frequencies that are superposed in the waves. And the thing is, for some regimes of those wave propagation, things are really understood since end of 17th to middle of last. I mean, in the last 15 years, with the work of Terence Tao and Bourgain and all those great guys with their teams and the school that they triggered. The thing is, there is just one regime for these equations, which is the supercritical regimes, where deterministic theories tend to fail. I mean, seem really to fail. And that is like a sign that the models has to be really re-understood. I mean, has to be rebuilt in some sense. And it is like related to the first problem, as I said, at the deepest level, because the situation that lead to this breakdown of all the methods that were developed since the middle of the last century is that problems become just supercritical because of the nonlinearity that appear and that tends to break down the solution in finite time. So this situation is just unique, right? But depending on the wave, on the physical setting, they appear in different shape. So what I do toward these problems is to build alternative theories which are not deterministic. Determinism is something like a game of betting on the worst case scenario. It is like saying, in the worst case scenario, I can solve this, right? You give me the worst data, then I can solve this one. But actually, in nature, maybe this worst data does not just exist. And sometimes you can just treat the things like in a probabilistic manner to say almost all data, or with high probability, all those data that exist will lead to global solutions. And this leads you to probabilistic solution theories for this. And in my talk that I will be giving in the session analysis and PDEs and application, I will talk about a new result that we posted end of December on the Navier-Stokes equation. I mean, a special regime of the Navier-Stokes equation, which is the Euler equation, which is actually the problematic regime, because in the Navier-Stokes you have some dissipation that tend to smooth out the solution and then prevent the breakdown of the solution in finite time. But in the Euler, you just kill that term. So you just stand with the nonlinearity that can make the solution crazy. And in this new result with my colleague, we showed that actually we can build the solution theory for smoothly, for smooth data, which is the setting of the Millennium problem. So we can build some probabilistic theories that lead to global solutions. And this is kind of an alternative solution theory to the deterministic problem. All right, so this is, I hope that it was understandable.
Yes,
No?
I hope so too.
All right, so this is kind of problem I will present. But actually in the talk, there will be a lot of images, so don't hesitate to come and then see. So it will be more intuitive.
Okay,
All
good.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Let's have Nick now.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and be able to interact with so many people and talk about great research. So I'm a mathematical biologist, as I said yesterday, for those of you who are here. And I work very closely with biologists and clinicians, so I'm a mathematician, but I'm really driven by trying to understand biological problems. And my main areas of research are in cell and developmental biology. So developmental biology, also known as embryology, is the study of how you go from, in animals, from a single fertilized egg cell, or in plants, from a single seed, to the fully developed plan of the adult body, or the grown plant body, where you have hundreds of different cell types which are specialized to do many things, and all coordinated in the right positions at the right times. And so this is a really complex, complicated problem. And it's only really quite recently that mathematics has started to play a significant role in this area. It was very much seen as a qualitative discipline. And so one of the big questions is, how do you apply mathematics for these types of systems which we have really quite limited information about them, limited data about what the mechanisms are that are coordinating these amazing processes. So one of the things that really fascinates me about living systems and the development of living systems is not just that they can do it, that you generate these wonderful patterns we see around us, but that it's so robust and adaptive. And so many systems in nature can generate wonderful patterns. But living systems have this ability to react and adapt to changes in their conditions. And this happens during development, that you can radically perturb developing embryos. And in many cases, they will recover from that and still generate the right final plan. And that's a really deep question to me. So the approach that I take, I use mathematics, I use differential equations and sometimes stochastic models, is really to say, can we understand what the basic kind of mechanisms are that can do this? So rather than, I don't take a big data-driven approach. In biology, increasingly, experimental techniques are generating enormous data sets. And there's one problem, which is how do we interrogate these data and find things out from them. That's not the approach I take. I'm in some ways much more modest than that, and much more limited in my abilities, shall we say. Is actually to say, well, can we use mathematics and the ideas of dynamical systems to try to understand what kind of basic mechanisms at very fundamental level, at the way that cells interact and molecules interact within cells, that can explain these amazing properties of not just pattern generation, but also adaptive capacity to that, and how living systems are different to non-living systems. So a lot of that involves understanding how we represent these systems as dynamical systems, which aspects are important to focus on. And that's where you need this real tight integration with the biologists, because you need to know what the important factors are rather than just, here's a data set with 10,000 genes in and find a pattern for me. That's important, but it's complementary to what I do. So really asking for those basic mechanisms of how do cells communicate with each other in order to coordinate their behaviors and generate the patterns that we see during development. And I look at both animal systems and plant systems. So I'm very, you know, I'm not restrictive. I'm very Catholic in my approach to what systems I'll look at. I'm happy to find interactions with anybody. And one of my objectives with the research chair in Ghana is to really increase the interactions between mathematics and computing and physics with the biologists, because certainly I find within the universities there's not a lot of communication going on between those departments. And so one of my objectives is to use the chair and the meetings associated with having the chair to really bring together those communities, because I think there's huge potential. It's difficult in a country like Ghana to establish a really big network of experimental labs in the kind of biology I'm interested in, because it's extraordinarily expensive and actually logistically quite difficult to get things like reagents and things like that. So that's a big problem about how you would establish wet lab biology in Ghana to be competitive internationally. But for computational and mathematical work, it's absolutely possible. And so there's a huge potential for everything we've discussed over the week, with the fact that that's where the young people are, that's where the creativity is and the energy. And it's entirely possible to do the kind of mathematical and computational work in biology that I do, and I think there's an enormous potential there. So that's what I'm trying to achieve over my term as a research chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Come to my talk, which will be very understandable.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Nick. Yes, Abebe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, actually, I'm not going to make it really abstract.
Is the microphone working?
Actually, I was in Germany for a very long time. I was as a basic student, was trained as a pure mathematician, and I had the luck to do my MSc thesis in numerical, actually theoretical optimization, and later on in numerical optimization. So until finishing my PhD, I was a mathematician, but looking for a meaning for the training that I got. And luckily, in 2008, I got a position with Professor Lee as a senior research scientist in computer science and automation. And then I just became a techno-mathematician. So I started to see things not really from the point of view of pure mathematics, and also to see mathematics in terms of solving real problems in the world. So my research, I classify in 3 areas, in 3 levels. And one is fundamental research, the other is applied research, and the third is practical research. Why should I do that? Because in the pure research, we try to solve problems which are really purely mathematical. In that area, I do stochastic optimization, particularly problems which are highly complex, which need reliability and fault tolerance, and how to really design control algorithms, control strategies, and also optimization algorithms for that. And so during my research in Germany, almost 15 years, it was research really outstanding. We tried to find a solution strategy for nonlinear chance constraint optimization problems, which are applicable in portfolio optimization, real-time control, and uncertainty. And also the very interesting result that I will be talking about today is how to really solve very hard chance constraint optimization problems using approximation strategy. And now that's the theoretical aspect about which I will be talking. But I do not stop over there, because coming back to Africa, in fact, I was coming repeatedly to Ethiopia as a visiting professor to 2 universities. If you just open your eyes, you'll see lots of problems in Africa which can be addressed scientifically and, in fact, with the use of technology. So one of the biggest problems that really surprised me is the loss of food everywhere. So you see fresh food being sold on the roadside in the open market, farmers losing their income because they cannot keep their food longer if there's a harvest time. So usually everything is pumped into the market. There is oversupply, even if there's no demand. So the market price is very low. So the return to the farmers is very low. So food security is really at risk. So we cannot solve these problems politically or by policy making. We have to address them really scientifically. So I started to research in food storage systems, particularly solar automated food storage systems, and water networking systems. So the water network system in many African countries is not really good, but mathematics has a lot of applications in water network systems. And the third research is in energy, renewable energy generation. Particularly, the current trend in many African countries is the use of sustainable energy into the grid. So how to really put that into the main grid, and not only that, how to really, some African countries are using promoting electric vehicles, but the charging stations are not there. So how to really establish charging stations which can be operated using multiple batteries. These are very interesting and very important problems. This is what I say applied research. All the theory, control engineering, embedded systems, and so on can be used over there. In fact, to that end, when I was in Germany, I was doing correspondence course in electronics, embedded control, and so on. That really helped me a lot. That's why I say I'm a techno-mathematician. From practical research, what I call practical research is actually those topics that I really give to MSc students. I call them practical research. They are addressed directly to real problems which are, for the time being, in Rwanda, like image super resolution. So the Rwandan Space Agency, they have a problem of really detecting objects. If there is a cloud and satellites flying by, they usually stay a very brief moment on that location. So how to do image super resolution for those objects which are on the ground. How to use machine learning to detect multiple malaria infections. How to really detect vehicle speed using cameras and microcontrollers. These are practical research, and I would like to be always sure if the student does his MSc with me, I would like to be sure that whether he gets employment, whether he can self-start himself, or he can go to PhD. These are the things that I'm doing. I'm happy to just explain that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abebe. You have a mic, Olivier. You have a mic next to you. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, morning. Okay, what type of research I'm interested in? So I will say I started as a PhD student in financial maths, and then work on stochastic optimal control, and then giving the time I spent in Oslo during that time, then I was doing a lot of optimal control with my advisor there. And after that, I started some work on stochastic differential equations. Basically, for those who who are not familiar with, it simply means that if you have a normal differential equation, and then you could also add what is called a noise and try to study well-posedness of such equations. So yeah, I got into that journey, and then the beauty was that when you look at stochastic differential equation, I think Mamadou said it, in many problems, deterministic problem, deterministic problem which we would not have well-posedness, sometimes the noise will kind of render that problem well-posed in a certain sense. So the noise, you have a restoration of well-posedness when you add noise to some deterministic problems. And this leads to a lot of people looking at the question of regularization by noise. So it means that if you have a differential equations, what happens if you add noise, if your differential equations, whether it's ordinary or partial differential equation, would that have a solution? So I got interested into that. And during the time I spent with some of the guys, we managed to answer some of those questions, especially in the case of wave equation. And recently, because all these questions are always answered when you add a noise, right? When you add a process, then it seems to restore the well-posedness of the equation. But very recently, because, and this is usually actually very connected to a property of that noise called occupation. I mean, you just study the regularity of the occupation measure. And this is what is connected so to that noise. So we were asking ourselves, do you have deterministic function that you can use to restore well-posedness for differential equations? I think we recently had one step to find some kind of deterministic function that satisfy some properties of stochastic processes. And I think the next step will be to answer those questions where you have a very an equation with very bad coefficient, meaning a Hill-Post problem, and then you add just a deterministic function, which will somehow restore the well-posedness of that thing. And then I think it's very recent. It's just last week that we had that on archive. And that's what I'll be talking about if you would like to know a bit more. And on the other side, I am interested in, for example, in financial math, that will be in some optimal control problem when we have some kind of regime switching in your coefficient, which makes them bad. And in that case, we have to sometime go to different theory to solve those problems. So this is what I've worked on, and then with some of the colleagues and my PhD student. And then recently, problems of energy has been a big one. And yeah, so you have optimal control for energy storage with colleagues. That is something that was also interesting to look at, and the cost of energy, and then all that. That was something student did in collaboration with colleagues also in Germany. And here in Africa, one thing that I'm interested in is financial inclusion, especially micro-lending. And this is something I'm still looking at. And then hopefully soon we get something meaningful. So yeah, we've got some initial understanding. And then yeah, hopefully we will understand a bit better what goes on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Jan, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I'm a chair in Rwanda since 2022, and I am a computer scientist by education. So I think one of my starting points is like, yeah, everything is zeros and ones, and then we start from there and we make up some problem. And maybe the second, the second theme, which is important for me, is okay, so I have these zeros and ones, and then I'd like to understand what is happening rigorously. Okay, so try to actually prove things in order to understand the mathematical reason, yeah, like why the things are the way they are. And then one specific interest I have is transmission of information and error correcting codes. Okay, so this is the problem is that we have some information, we want to transmit it over wireless, over cable, and so on. And this is often not a noiseless process. There can be distortions, and there is a big field, subfield of information theory, coding theory, that is studying these error correcting codes. What are their the limits of their performance? Like what can be done, what cannot be done, and you know, like this whole field was started by, there is this seminal result called Shannon's theorem that gives somehow the fundamental limits on the transmission of information. But there are still, I think, many interesting questions on the edges about, you know, the overall picture and specific codes. So this is one area I'm working on, and there will be a talk in the one of the sessions by my PhD student Donald, which touches on this subject. Then I guess another theme in my research is I have a bit of a negative mind, maybe unfortunately. So I like to look for, you know, problems, like just some what is going wrong. You know, and this can be, as a computer scientist, one big area where we have this sort of result. It's called complexity theory. So you know, like some problems are just difficult to solve, and okay, that doesn't buy you anything in itself, but it's maybe good to know so that you don't waste your time in order to find a solution that that does not exist. So there, I also did a little bit of work on the, for example, on computational limits of neural networks. Yeah, like so. There is, of course, neural networks can do a lot, but it's also interesting to ask what are the limits, at least like for the current technologies, so that we can at least identify them, so we know what are the limits that are to be overcome if we want to make progress. And in the same spirit, I'm also interested in dynamical systems, maybe modeling the spread of information, you know, in networks among agents in the society, and so on and so on. And again, maybe on this negative note, I like to think about how can this process fail. And there will be another talk in another session by Abdul, my student, where we study models of opinion which end up in the society polarizing into two camps. Yeah, this is a problem which can occur. It's you know, not in every society, but especially recently there are concerns in many countries about this. So we study what mathematical conditions on the structure of interactions in the society can lead it to a state where it divides into two polarized clusters. Another similar problem that I like to think about is, and this was maybe even mentioned yesterday during the other panel, is how can the process of making decisions and aggregating people's choices, making a selection, fail? And this is related. So there is an old phenomenon called Condorcet paradox. So it's an example of a way in which the voting in the society can somehow fail to make a rational choice, which is somehow maximizing the social welfare. And then this is connected to just maybe a more general, a more purely mathematical thing, which is like some combinatorial settings in which we have these intransitivity phenomena. So this will be another talk that I'm going to give in one of the sessions. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Since I'm wearing two hats, I'm going to also talk as a German research chair, in case you're interested in what I work on. So I work on what I generally call mathematics of data science. And so I train as an applied mathematician, applied and computational mathematician, and I see this field as a spectrum. You know, you have people working on theory, you have computation, where people work on developing algorithms, and you have a space where people apply this algorithm to try to solve real-life problems. And in this community, you would find people that are doing modeling and analysis, focusing mostly on the theory, but you would also see people focus on developing algorithm, doing simulations to test this algorithm on synthetic data, but also when they're happy with the algorithm, they implement these on try to solve real life problems. So I have been looking at using the whole spectrum, I would say. I have problems where they're coming from compressed sensing background, for instance, which is related to the zeros and ones problems that Jan mentioned about, recovery of signals, applied in communications and many other fields. And in that space, we are interested in building algorithms, but also analyzing the convergence of these algorithms, which is using some theoretical tools. And when they work, we actually want to apply this on real-life problems. And one real-life problem that we found was applying it on doing pool testing for COVID. When you have a pandemic like COVID, for instance, you want to test people, right, massively. But then, testing, you use kits to test people, right? The testing kits are expensive, so eventually government spend a lot of money to test people. Is it possible to do it in a clever way where you reduce the number of tests you have to do? You take a group of people and put their samples together and test and see if they have the disease or they don't have the disease. If they don't have a disease, then you have used only one kit to test like 10 people. You save nine kits, right? So you're saving money for government. So these are things that we worked on, and we find this. We've got numerous results in this space, and actually we are trying to see. We have actually done some real tests on COVID data on COVID samples, and we are planning to scale this up, hopefully leading to some kind of a product afterwards. But then there's also a project that I work with collaborators and students on what I call physics-informed machine learning. This is where you're building the machine learning algorithms taking into account the physics of the problem, which is a traditional job of a mathematics modeler, right? You want to make sure the algorithm you're building takes into account the physics of the problem. And so we have problems like, it's called PINs, physics-informed neural networks, but you have new terminologies like DeepNet and others coming on that people are using. And then there's a problem that also spans this whole space, has both theory, computation, and application, which is equation learning. Can you learn? So, we all know science. Like, we take the data and observe from the data. We try to come up with governing equations, right? So this is actually what we want to do now by using computing, right? Just take the data. We have huge data describing whatever phenomenon you have. Can you reconstruct the governing equations coming from that data? So it's called equation learning. We have developed some tools to do this for certain problems. This is not an open problem. It's not going to work for all kinds of data, but there are certain situations, like some dynamical systems that you can actually reconstruct or learn the functions from the data. And there are other problems that are very theoretical, like with a group in Aachen, we are trying to find convergence guarantees for stochastic gradient descent, which is a very key algorithm in all this machine learning algorithm, AI algorithm we hear about. The core fundamental algorithm is stochastic gradient descent. But there are no strong mathematical guarantees of convergence on this with this algorithm. So this is therefore fundamental work that we're doing, and we think it's going to be useful. And then we have towards the other spectrum, where we are building just the algorithms and then applying it. We have, for instance, work on diabetic retinopathy, where you try to learn diseases from the images of the retina. So there's this apt saying that says, the eye, we use the front of the eye to see the outside world, and we use the back of the eye to see inside us. So the eye has a lot of information in the retina that can tell a lot about what's going on in the body. So you are able to predict some diseases that somebody has from the images of the retina. And diabetes is one of those diseases. So we worked on this, where we not only try to do some prediction using machine learning, but also building the machine learning models that better predict this. And then to the extreme, we have situations where we just pick up machine learning models and just try to predict certain outcomes and try to solve certain real-life problems. And some of those problems come from health, where we work with people in health that have a lot of data. We just use machine learning tools to try to do some prediction, some inference on what some problems they're interested in. Renewable energy is another one we are interested in, agriculture and ecology, some of these problems that we worked on. So there will be the first session here that some of my collaborators and students will give talks, and you would see talks coming from all these different areas. It's like a sample of things that we do. That's me. We have about 6 minutes. I was going to ask them some questions, but I think it's fair to give the audience the space to ask questions. If anybody has questions, let's do that. If you don't have questions, I have a lot of questions for them. Okay, there's a hand at the back there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairs. I have one question to Olivier. You mentioned about the financial inclusion in Africa. This is very interesting. Please, can you elaborate more? What are you doing or what are you expecting to do on the financial inclusion in Africa?
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Isambi, for the question. So when I say financial inclusion, I will maybe touch one or two things for us to understand. When I was in Ghana, walking on the street, and in 2019, remember, about 250 microfinance were closed by the government. And then when you do that, to go to that extreme, it means that something went very wrong. And then when they close, not only the customers, the client will be suffering for it, but everything, even the economy. So part of it was that the default frequency in those microfinance were quite high. And if you go there and you ask because I was in contact with one CEO of a microfinance, and then you ask them, okay, do you have a statistician working here? No. Do you have an economy? No. But how do you do? I mean, if you give credit, you give loan, and how do you manage? How do you do that? And they say, oh, we give loan, and then we pray that they will pay back, so we have to just chase them, and they pay back. And I was also wondering, that I was checking the interest rate, because when they say micro loan, I mean, when we understand loan, we think of, if I say it in euros, someone would think of maybe 10,000 euros. No. If I say it in rand, you may think of 150,000 rand, but it's not there. It's about 200 euros when we say micro loan, 200, 300 euros. And then these people cannot always repay their loan in time, and these are short loan, like 3 to 6 months, with very high interest rate. So I got interested into that because from my family, my background, and I said, oh, those who will need those loans are quite small. I mean, and if you think, you look at the landscape, you have many people who will need those kind of loans because they are not qualified to go to the traditional institution. And then I said, okay, maybe what can I do? I study math, but what is the math I study? What can it be of help with the society? So I started to look at credit risk modeling, whereby we will have a credit scoring, and based on some mathematical model. And yes, we've had some because we were trying to predict the default probability, but that wasn't enough for me. We said, okay, if you have a default, and then if you are giving loan, you would like to know what is the next step, what you want to anticipate what the person will do. So we are trying to come up with some mathematical model that will really give a chance, because the message is not about giving a very high loan to the people, but it's about studying and give it to the right set of people as well. So this is what we had. And you can also find that, unlike elsewhere, when you check the data, maybe I will surprise you again. We went and then just some descriptive statistic. We were showing some graph and pictures. And then they were like, oh, how does it happen? They had all the intuition, because when we told them, maybe from 30 to 35, they somehow default a lot. From before that, they don't do much. After 40, they don't. And they say, yeah, because sometime from 30 to 35, they just got married, and maybe they are busy. So they have it, but they don't have any quantitative analysis to back that. So yes, this is what we're trying, we're trying to understand, and then see if we can also contribute for us.
Okay.
Okay.
I done, yeah. So let's have
So that's is what I want. So this credit scoring for those microloan, and taking into account what the traditional analysis from the West will not. Because if I take again in on the continent, I'm sorry, I'm being long. You borrow money. And then what you realize is that during, for example, Ramadan, you will see that it has an impact on the loan repayment. I guess, and I could just understand because we went to a place where there was a lot of Muslim, and my guess was that during that period, maybe they will close the shop at some point, they will go on fast, and then they will do things which will really have an impact on their income. And these are the things that. From other data, you wouldn't see that. So this is one of the things we are trying to do, and trying to come up with some idea because to make sure that the interest rate becomes lower. So that's it.
Thank you, Olivier.
I hope that's clear.
You have a question, so go ahead.
Yes, I have a question to all of you. So, what are your plans after the term of the GRC program? So, are you willing to stay in Africa, or what do you plan to do?
Okay, good question. Who wants to go first? Okay, go ahead.
So that's a very nice question, actually. Personally, I have a plan to stay. In fact, in between, I've been living in Germany for more than 23 years. So part of the family is there. So, but personally, I would like to remain here because I see there are lots of things to be done. So in fact, if we have to change Africa, it's not from outside, it should be from inside. So my plan is just to establish, if possible, a private institute to really just bring the brilliant ones who could not get opportunities somewhere else, to give them still further opportunities to be self-sustained. In fact, the biggest thing that we should do in Africa is not to hand out, to sustain, to be people self-employed and generate income for themselves, and also to teach the young generation to become important to themselves, to their family, to their community. And that's what I'm planning.
Anybody else want to go? Mamadou? You're just starting, right?
Yeah,
You have a long way to go.
I mean, I would say that it is up to you, right? You are my Center President. So, more seriously, yeah, definitely to stay if I have that opportunity to continue that great, experience. Yes.
Nick?
So it's still quite early as well, I don't know. It's a tough question because I'm clearly not an African, so I don't even know if I have the right to stay. But more seriously, one of the things that struck me when I told colleagues and friends and family that I was going to work in Ghana for several years, they were really surprised. There was this kind of shock, which wouldn't have been there if I'd said, I'm going to Germany for 6 years, or I'm going to the US for 6 years. They were, oh, great, that's brilliant. Whereas this kind of shock, very, very quickly followed by the question, why? And so I think, rather than my physical location, I think what I want to do longer term, and as part of the chair, but beyond that, is to normalize that kind of thing, so that if somebody in 6 years' time says a similar thing to me, then it's not immediately why? Oh, wow. You know, that's so weird. And so that's something that I don't know whether that's best achieved by me being here in Africa or being back in Europe and having strong links to Africa and having built up groups and collaborations here. Quite possibly the latter, because really what I want to do is normalize it, and that African countries, particularly sub-Saharan African countries, are just seen as a normal component of the international research landscape, and not this strange thing that you do that is a bit of a wow factor that you're doing that it's just an absolutely normal part of the research landscape. And I don't know yet, but it may be that actually it's better for me to do that back in Europe with regular visits or something. So I honestly don't know at the moment. That's what I'd like to achieve.
Great. Olivier, what's your take?
Good question, Mustafa. I think my future, I just want to think of not where do I want to stay or whether I want to continue contributing. So I could stay in Africa and not contribute anything to the development of Africa. So, and I always say it was a privilege to be one of those who is contributing via this funding, the GRC program, to the I would say to the growth of mathematics on the continent. So I think what I know for sure is that, because even between Ames and Liverpool, I don't know if in 5 or 10 years I'll be in Liverpool, right? But what I know is that in 5 or 10 years, I want to have grown more PhD students and more MPhil students on the continent. So I think even prior to joining Ames, maybe I would tell this story. I'm sorry again.
We are running out of time, so
okay.
make it short.
Yes. Before joining Ames, I met this student during the GFG meeting, and that's where I met Ralph, I think, for the first time. And he was in his mid-50s or 60s and wanted to do a PhD, right? And I would say he completed the PhD about 2 years ago, I think about 60. And I was here, we were meeting. So this is what I want to do, regardless of where I am. I would like to just contribute as much as I can to the development. So, which means that if Ames said, Olivier, come and teach or come and stay here for some time, or any other African institution, I'll be coming. So that's for sure, because I always say that I studied on the continent, so for me it's a duty to give back. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Jan, you have a mic? You want to borrow his mic? Okay.
Okay, so I guess there is a saying that it's hard to make predictions, especially if you want to make predictions about the future. And 5 years is a long time in the future, so I don't know about that. But something I can say is that even in inside the mathematics, you have certain divisions, like certain kinds of mathematics. And in my experience, outside Ames, I think the areas of mathematics that I'm familiar with and that I felt always attracted to, the African representation is really not large. And one of the challenges, but also like one of the reasons I think it makes sense for me to work here is to maybe provide outlets. There are, at least like where I grew up, there were people who would think the way I do, who would have a similar kind of talent. And I think it's important to also provide an outlet for the students, for people in Africa who have this way of thinking, who have this kind of talent, so that they can develop in that direction. And so I guess at least globally, maybe the best solution would be that then those ones replace me, possibly over my dead body.
Thank you. Yes. I don't have to answer your question, right? I'm not going. I am already here, right? Yeah, sure. All right. I think we ran out of time. It's like we're running into coffee time. So let's you would see the details of some of the work they're doing in the next sessions, okay? Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, panelists. And it's time for tea and coffee.